February the 1st, 1979. Punk hardman Sid Vicious wakes up in a New York jail charged with murder. But in spite of the charge, he'll soon be a free man.
He was released into the custody of his mother, who then, goes out and buys drugs for her son.
He was trying on clothes, playing air guitar, jumping around.
Both hands are just dripping with blood.
He wanted her to inject into him, and she said no, she wouldn't do that.
In 24 hours, Sid Vicious will be dead from a fatal overdose of heroin.
I was part and parcel of supplying him with something which probably was responsible for killing him off.
February the 1st, 1979. Sid Vicious is held at the Rikers Island detention center just across from Manhattan, New York. This is the beginning of his last 24 hours alive. For Sid, this is a living nightmare. He's charged with murdering his girlfriend, Nancy Spungen, but has no recollection of the attack. He'd been out of his mind on drugs, but all he remembers is that when he woke up, Nancy was dead. Now one thought terrorizes him. Did he do it? For 55 days, Sid, a heroin addict, has gone through the agony of withdrawal. On top of all this, he's been subjected to humiliating attacks.
He apparently was raped, he was abused, he was beaten up. Everything that is your worst nightmare that would happen to you in prison. I mean, how could anybody cope with that?
At dawn, Sid is woken and taken from his cell. He's hoping the nightmare is over and that he'll never have to return to prison. His lawyers believe they can beat the murder charge, and later today they'll make their case to get him out on bail. Sid's hearing is scheduled for noon.
I was dealing with a 21-year-old kid, transplanted from the UK to the United States in a big problem.
As Sid leaves Rikers Island behind him, the clock is ticking on his final day. Step back 3 years to London, 1976. It's the summer that Britain found punk.
It was a fashion thing, it was a music thing, and I just think everybody just locked onto the same vibe at the same time. I think that's what it was all about, that's what punk was, and I don't really think... OK, we had a dwarf, there was Helen, yes, there was a lot of gay guys there, yes, there were a few sort of like lesbians, yes, there were some hookers. It was this whole mix, but that was London at the time. I mean, this is what was going on. Everyone was young, we were all doing really strange things.
It was very outrageous for that time. I mean, we really pissed a lot of people off just because of the way we looked.
Back then, Sid Vicious was a shy 19-year-old called John Simon Ritchie.
He looked more like a sort of James Dean character. He had like slick black hair, big sort of studded wristband. Sid had this shy little boy, lost childlike quality, I think he had about him.
Ritchie was drawn to the emerging punk scene and started hanging out at the Sex Clothes shop on King's Road.
It was a place where something magical might happen if you hung around long enough. And I think that was always a kind of gave everybody a sense of purpose to dwell and to make that pilgrimage from wherever in the UK to this store.
John Ritchie was one of the many punks who made that pilgrimage.
I always liked him, I have to say, and there was something warm about him. He was just very genuinely just a nice person. I mean, so yeah, he stuck around. I mean, I think he was probably stealing the clothes as much as anybody else was.
John Ritchie was close to punk's inner circle. One of his best mates was John Lydon, the lead singer of the notorious band The Sex Pistols.
He pushed himself into the scene, you know, so that when the papers started to write about the Pistols and the whole punk thing, you know, he was one of the first things that were mentioned. He went hand in hand with the sort of growth of punk and particularly Pistols.
He didn't quite know what he wanted to do, Sid, but you just knew he was waiting to sort of like fit in somewhere.
When the group did set out to play in a number of pubs around London, this tall, somewhat stalwart creature did show up, and we nicknamed him.
Lydon was given the name Johnny Rotten after his bad teeth, while Ritchie was given the name Sid Vicious, not because of any violent tendencies, but after Lydon's pet hamster, Vicious. It was all a bit of a joke.
Yeah, he was around, you'd see him, and I just thought he was a bit of a burp, to be honest.
Sid was complete marshmallow, really, you know. He's like, we were like playing with children and playing games, and he loved all of that, and like, and he was a big softie.
Now the shy and slightly goofy John Simon Ritchie had a new name, Sid Vicious. He'd spend the rest of his life trying to live up to it. Sid has 20 hours left to live. He's escorted from Rikers Island to the New York Criminal Court. He's been accused of murdering his girlfriend, Nancy Spungen, but his lawyers are certain they can get him out on bail. They argue that Sid is innocent and that Nancy was probably killed by a drug dealer who wanted to steal her money.
There were a number of other people who lived in the area, in the hotel, and who were supplying drugs to these people, who had opportunities and access to these people, and it was not unlikely that someone could have come in and attempted to assault them. We were very optimistic that the prosecution would not be in a position to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he was responsible.
Sid was gonna get off, we all hoped. Bailey was gonna do an excellent job. His bill was gonna be astronomical. And Sid was gonna play Las Vegas and pay for it. That was him.
But first, Sid's lawyers have to get him out of jail. They persuade the judge to release him, but only if someone can stump up £30,000 in bail money.
I had the money. It wasn't a question. I was not going to use it. I used it immediately.
At 10 a.m., Sid is released.
He was certainly relieved to know he was being released. The last thing that I said to him was, I'll be in touch with you, just be careful.
Sid is free, and his lawyers set about preparing his defense. But in less than 19 hours, Sid will be dead. 2 years earlier, and punk was declaring anarchy in the UK. Some saw it as a threat to the very foundations of civilization. The Sex Pistols were at the front line of the movement, and Sid was in the crowd at every gig, living up to his new nickname.
Whenever we played, there would seem to be some kind of altercation going on, which seemed to be Sid trying to get a bit of the limelight for himself.
Sid was determined to make his mark and create his own brand of anarchy. In one incident, he attacked a rock critic with a bike chain just because he'd given his favourite band a bad write-up.
Just be completely destructive and you'd get really pissed, really out of it, start lunging around. You know, usually if he did start a fight, he was one who got worse anyway.
Sid was one of these extraordinary people who could have had the words willing prey tattooed on his forehead, because that's what he really was.
And it seemed to me he had this kind of slightly masochistic quality about him, that he'd like to start a fight so maybe in the end he would get an hiding, and he did get hiding from a good few people that he picked on. He picked on the wrong blokes.
He had a gift for provocation. He did invent that strange kind of dance that became known as the pogo.
Sid's violent outbursts got him noticed and eventually won him his dream job. When bass player Glenn Matlock left the band, McLaren chose Sid as his replacement.
Sid was the most perfect choice to move into that part. I mean, as much as he really couldn't play anything. But hey, listen, didn't matter, did it? It was all about the image.
Becoming a Sex Pistol, I mean, it's probably a dream come true in a way. You know, from being their #1 fan, he was now in the band.
There was no question you couldn't take your eyes off. He shone so much more brightly than anyone else. When he ever boarded the stage, the audience would always squeeze themselves all over to the left side, because all they wanted to do was be as close as possible to Sid. And Sid would spend sometimes half the show constantly talking to them.
Within months of joining the band, Sid had become the main attraction, turning his stage act into a bloody sideshow.
And just remember at one point him sitting on the bar and he was just covered in blood. I think he'd just broken the bottle and he just started slashing himself.
I used to sort of like put cigarettes on my arm and watch them burn down, and I used to slash that open. You know, I used to rip Coke cans in half to get the jagged edge so you could get a real nice cut and stuff. And I'd never seen Sid doing any of that until he'd seen me doing it.
Charles Wells is a juvenile psychologist who studied Sid's life.
People in the audience would look at him horrified. What kind of person would do this? And their response feeds his sense of self as being different, as being special. He's focused his energies and his efforts on creating an identity, one which doesn't seem to be true to who he perhaps really was. He's trapped by this, because in the end, it's what people want to see. They don't want to see who you really are.
The quiet, shy John Simon Ritchie had transformed himself into the ultimate punk icon, Sid Vicious. Sid has 17 hours left to live. He's out on bail expecting a hero's welcome. But McLaren, who's organised Sid's release, isn't there to meet him. He's in London, being sued by John Lydon for control of the Sex Pistols.
I regret not having been there, but, you know, I had a bloody huge court case mounting on my head at the same time. And you couldn't be in both places at once. It was really hard.
In fact, as Sid walks free, he's met by just his mum, Anne, and an old friend, Peter Kodik.
I recall that moment so well because I think now, when I look back on it, I preferred him to stay in Rikers Island.
Sid's had a crippling heroin addiction for a year now. In prison, he was denied access to the drug. Now, he's only got one thing on his mind.
Walking down the street is like, I think, you know, Sid kept saying, you know, did you get it? Did you get it, Mum? Did you get it? You know? Yes, Sid, you know? Okay. Walk, faster, faster.
Sid is anxious to get to his mother's hotel, a few blocks from the courthouse. Just before his release, his mum told the papers that what Sid was looking forward to the most was a giant ice cream. But in a bizarre act of motherly love, she's bought her son what he really wants: heroin. It's only an hour since Sid was released on bail with a murder charge hanging over his head. In 16 hours, he'll kill himself. Or that's how the story goes. But according to one eyewitness, Sid didn't kill himself. He was killed by someone else. Sid Vicious has 16 hours left to live. He's been released on bail accused of murdering his girlfriend, Nancy Spungen. Sid's body is clean of drugs for the first time in years, but not for long. Sid's with his mum and a friend, Peter Kodik. His mum's bought him heroin he's now desperate to inject.
He was released into the custody of his mother, who then, what? Goes out and buys drugs for her son. You know, it's unbelievable to me that that would have happened.
Because of heroin as being an addictive substance, in some ways it keeps Sid in the relationship with his mother and perhaps prevents him from truly separating and achieving independence.
For as long as they can both remember, Sid and his mum have taken drugs together. Soon those drugs will kill her only son. Sid Vicious was born in South London on May the 27th, 1957. His father left home when he was 2 years old. In his absence, Sid forged a strong bond with his mother. She was more of a friend than a parent, and she came to dominate Sid's life.
She was poor, and she had a kid. So it wasn't even like she was a single working mother. It was just Sid and Ann, you know? And she was kind of a hippie or a beatnik, I suppose. Free spirit.
Sid's mum led a chaotic life, moving from place to place and doing whatever she had to survive.
And then she moved to Ibiza, Spain for a little while and took Sid with her.
Because she'd been part of the hippie movement back home in England, she would charge sailors to roll joints. That was her way of kind of hustling a couple of quid to keep the kid in a slightly better life.
One of the possible consequences is, again, finding it difficult to develop a clear identity. And if a young person has never stayed in a place long enough to establish long enough relationships with peers, then they will miss out on that, and it will be perhaps more difficult for them to say, you know, who am I?
She heard a rumor from a friend of hers that if you were heroin dependent or drug dependent, you could get a free flat. You could be moved up the housing list in like no time. So she just literally said she was heroin dependent and she got this flat. Of course, the downside to that is you're living in a world surrounded by heroin dependent people.
By the time Sid was 7, his mum was addicted to heroin.
I visited his house where his mother lived. His mother was a dope dealer. It was quite clear. She was always in the kitchen cooking up something or other.
It would have been a very obvious and regular sight to come home and find Mum flaked across 2 mattresses with a syringe in one arm.
I mean, my first memory of him is sort of like people emptying pills into his hands and him just shoving it in his mouth and then asking what the pills were.
Seeing his mother using a needle encouraged teenage Sid to experiment.
Some people are taking speed or amphetamine sulfate, and some people are experimenting with it. And because Mum's got things like old metal syringes that you've got to boil, wash, and you can use 100 or 1,000 times, he's turning up and going, actually, man, you get a better kick out of it if you inject it.
Well, it'd take mass amounts of anything. It'd take downers, speeds, dexys, bombers, blues, amphetamine sulfate, which was, of course, the drug of choice of all punks and everything, and we all used to take loads of that. Anything that would be stuck in front of him, Sid would inject. That's what I said. I mean, you know, it could be Tuinol, it could be speeds, cocaine, heroin. The more things, the better, really.
Some images that are completely burned on my memory forever from that period, and one of them is Anne's boyfriend selling Sid drugs, heroin, literally in front of me. And I thought, you know, that was it as far as I was concerned. I mean, there was no clearer picture of what it was all about.
By his own admission, Sid injected speed up to 14 times a day.
It's highly significant that his mother was a heroin addict in the past. The adults in a child's relationship act as models. And for instance, in a home where there is a lot of open drug use, then this will become normal for that child.
Despite the unconventional upbringing, Sid and his mother were very close. But her inability to say no to her son would end in tragedy. Sid has 13 hours left to live. He arrives at his mother's hotel, eager to take the heroin she bought for him.
He's back out, faced with things he was faced with before. Often addicts talk about their drug as their best friend, their lover.
Sid and his mum know he's taking a massive risk injecting a large dose of heroin, especially now his body's clean.
One could see his mother supplying him with drugs as an act of care. Perhaps she recognized the pain he was in psychologically and emotionally and was doing what she could to take the pain away. There is this association with happier times in his life, the times that he's used with his lover, Nancy. And there could even be a recreation of that in using it with other people who he counts as his close friends and his family.
Michael Baden is a heroin expert and the coroner who carried out the autopsy on Sid's body.
In 55 days, he wouldn't have had any tolerance left, and he would have had to have started off at a low dose of heroin. It's very common for people who have been addicted to heroin, who go to jail. If they're not careful on their first dose, they can die.
What had been sold to her was absolute rubbish.
I'm sorry, Simon.
It's rubbish.
I'm sorry, Simon.
Sorry? You think I want to hear sorry? Shut up.
Which left him even more disappointed, even more angry. Everything that he was waiting for, this big hit that he was waiting for after he got out of the court, wasn't going to happen.
Peter, you know how I like your photography?
Desperate for a fix, Sid turns to his friend, Peter Kodik.
Sort me out, yeah? Peter?
As a rock photographer, Kodik knows the New York drug scene, and Sid knows he can be relied upon to source high-grade heroin, paid for by his mum.
That's what I want to hear. Brilliant.
I said I'd see what I could do, and I'd see him later on that evening. She probably must have given me, say, between, let's say, $100, $150.
Kodik leaves to score the heroin Sid craves. Sid waits with his mother. Even though she now seems happy to supply her son with the drug, she wasn't the one who got him hooked. For that, Sid can thank the other woman in his life, Nancy. Two years earlier, and just weeks after joining the Sex Pistols, Sid's notorious antics have put him at the forefront of punk. One night, he ended up crashed out on the floor with his mate Johnny Rotten and an American groupie called Nancy Spungen.
She rolled over to John and tried to fuck him. And I think he wasn't cooperative. And so she rolled the other way, and Sid was. And I think that was it, really. Sid lost his virginity to Nancy. As a second choice, I have to say.
Nancy had come to London on a mission to bed a Sex Pistol, and now she'd got one, she wasn't going to let him go.
Hey, do you want to make a pornographic movie? Give us £100.
Sid was very immature, he was very insecure, and she was ideal for him, you know, because he was one saying that you're the star, and which, you know, when you're insecure is what you need.
Sid was like really shining out, and John was being like nothing. You know, he just wasn't giving it anymore.
Once more, Sid had put his trust in a habitual drug user. Nancy had been a heroin addict from the age of 14.
I think she just had one thing on her mind all the time. It was like where her next fix was coming from, more than anything else.
Sid had been injecting speed with his mum for years. Within days of meeting Nancy, he took heroin for the first time.
Nancy's influence was twofold. One was that she told him he was great, and second, she told him that it's even better when you take smack.
They
the heroin took a hold, yes, that sort of changed his personality, as obviously it would, and he took to it, unfortunately, like a duck to water.
One might imagine that in that relationship, he was able to find acceptance of himself as a man, perhaps. And this would, of course, increase his level of attachment and devotion to her.
Nancy would sort of say to Sid, well, you know, I'll have this, but, you know, you can't handle that much, you know, that kind of thing. So he'd be like, yes, I can.
Sid, damn you!
Within a month, Sid was hooked and using heroin every day.
It wasn't anything I could do, but to see it happening, it was like seeing somebody come down with a fatal disease in front of your eyes.
Sid had finally broken his dependency on his mother and replaced her with Nancy. But with Nancy came heroin, the drug that would eventually kill him.
What was the next question? What was that question again?
It's early evening. Sid Vicious has 9 hours left to live. Sid and his mum Anne take a cab across New York to a small apartment in Greenwich Village, where she's arranged a party to celebrate his first day of freedom.
So what was it like in there, man? It's Rikers, how was it?
The apartment is owned by Michelle Robinson, a 22-year-old actress. Sid started sleeping with Michelle shortly after Nancy's death. She was one of the last people to spend time with Sid before he was detained at Rikers Island.
I'll tell you what, you'd be popular in
Also at the party is Eileen Polk, a New York punk who's a friend of Sid's mum.
What are you gonna do next, then? We were all in the bedroom when the party started out. He was hopeful in the early part of the day that he'd be acquitted and he'd be able to be playing music again, put a band together. With Sid and Ann, it wasn't like mother and son. It was like they were partners in whatever crime, the hell they were creating, whatever it was. She was his friend more than his mother. She cared about him a lot and took care of him when she could, like a mother. But she was considered one of the gang.
At 8 p.m., while Peter Kodik searches the streets for heroin, Anne cooks her son's favourite meal, spaghetti bolognese. Sid had been in good form all afternoon.
He had been so positive. While we were cooking dinner, he was trying on clothes, playing air guitar, jumping around. It was like the Sid that I knew was always there deep inside, but circumstances made it hard for that good-humored person to come out, especially in the recent past.
One of the things in treating depressed people that you always watch for, because if you see that their mood suddenly starts to get better, one of the things you have to be very suspicious of is that they haven't decided that they're really going to kill themselves, because their mood usually picks up when they do. They're no longer in confusion and in conflict.
But around midnight, Peter Kodik and a friend arrive at the party.
The atmosphere changed. The atmosphere of the party changed.
Peter, you naughty little girl.
Kodik has kept his promise and scored. Sid can finally take the high-quality heroin he's been craving all day. Just a year earlier, and Sid's escalating drug use was taking its toll. The Sex Pistols were beginning to fall apart, and everyone blamed Nancy.
I'd have everyone coming up to me and going, that bitch, that slag, why the hell didn't she fuck off? She was a hooker, she was a drug addict, she was the worst possible influence for Sid. And then Sid would come and say, she's great, she's really beautiful.
In a botched attempt to get Sid off drugs, Malcolm McLaren sent the band on tour.
This is how unscheming Malcolm was. Malcolm felt that Sid was taking smack because the band weren't gigging, and so he was just bored and he was frustrated. So Malcolm thought, we have to get some gigs for the band, so he sent them to Holland. To keep Sid off smack, you send him to Holland, which is the most dumb thing you can do.
Well, it's always difficult to cope with people who are heroin addicts, particularly if you're not and you don't have a lot of experience in that world.
He was good at sort of like promoting the controversy. I think that was it, but I don't think in any other area he knew what he was doing. He might have thought he wanted to be a rock and roll manager, but he certainly wasn't acting like one.
There was nothing fatherly about me. I was very much a Machiavellian, mischievous kid myself. I was not the obvious manager. I mean, the record industry was terrified of me as a manager because I actually adored mismanaging. We tried to cold turkey him in Holland.
Every night, people had to be with Sid all the time to stop people giving him smack. And it was something you really dreaded, because he'd be, you know, he'd like become petulant, he'd get stroppy like smack addicts do when they can't get their fix.
We would not allow him to go to the toilet without a roadie present. Boogie, another roadie, had to smash the door in, only to see Sid sitting on the toilet saying, "You can't even have a shit in peace."
He went from having that very charming naivety to being a right pain in the arse.
More often than not, Sid got his way and took more heroin. So when the band returned to London, McLaren came up with another plan. He'd remove the supplier, Nancy.
We beat up his girlfriend, Nancy, I have to be honest with you. Wrapped her up, threw her in the back of this car, and the roadie, Roden, I think it was. His job was to drive her straight to Heathrow and put her on the first flight back to the US.
It was Boogie, Sophie and me trying to hustle Nancy into a cab.
Soon the kidnap attempt ran into trouble.
She kind of managed to break open the back door of the car and roll out into the curb as a policeman came strolling by, and she was just screaming, "I've been kidnapped by the Sex Pistols! Help!"
McLaren's efforts were in vain. In January 1978, in a haze of heroin and bitter disputes, the Sex Pistols split. Sid and Nancy were now free to follow their path to oblivion.
The effect on Sid of the band splitting up was probably felt more deeply than, and more suddenly, more deeply than anybody else. On the night that this happened, Sid went off and OD'd. Sid was turning blue on a mattress on the floor, and I picked him up. I started walking him around the room, and he started to come back.
Sid Vicious has just 4 hours left to live. It's past midnight and Sid's been waiting to inject heroin all day. At last, Peter Kodik prepares his fix.
I knew this stuff was quite good because the person I got it from, I knew, and they said, you know, be a little bit careful because this is quite good stuff. So I knew it was quite strong, the heroin that had been picked up.
That's good, man. That'd be good.
I think I sort of opened the packet and show him what I got. I mean, you know, Sid's initial reaction would probably be, oh, well, I'll take the whole lot.
Beauty, you beauty. Go easy.
I said, no. This is, you know, this is good stuff I've been told is very strong. Be really careful. So, of course, you know, you tell anybody that, but they still do probably too much.
One can keep on taking drugs in order to get rid of the pain, to get rid of the memory. And this itself can lead to death, but that may not be the conscious intention of the individual.
It's a little bit of heaven for me.
Yeah. He was fine for, 10, 15 minutes. Then I think, he got up, he threw up.
There he is.
He went to the bathroom, threw up again. And sort of, I think, oblivious to it all. She got a little bit worried maybe when, Sid was throwing up, but she was used to that before. She'd probably seen Sid throw up a million times before.
Oh my God, no! Shark, make some tea, please.
My first thought was, oh, he's fallen asleep or something, but then I realized right away that he was overdosing. He started turning blue, and it was pretty scary.
Get up.
If somebody takes an overdose of heroin, he can manifest the effects of sleeping, of having fluid get in his lungs, even have froth coming out of his mouth.
Come on.
The heroin acts to depress the brain function. They can't breathe right.
Sid, come on. Come on, buddy. Sid, what's my name? What's my name? Talk to me, come on.
It was like, oh my God, he's, taking too much.
Sid, come on. Come on, buddy. Oh, breathe. Oh.
The basic thing was to keep him up, moving around, and not let him lapse in or fall asleep, or to keep him going, pump some liquids into him.
Come on. Sid, hold his head up, hold his head up.
I had a conversation with Anne in the living room where I said, look, we're about 3 blocks from St. Vincent's Hospital. Do you think we should do anything, bring him to the hospital? And she said, no, absolutely not. The press will find out, they'll make another circus out of it, and he'll go back to Rikers Island.
Anne's insane gamble with her son's life pays off, and finally Kodik manages to bring Sid round.
He's fine, just stand up.
He came out of it. And the first thing he said when he came out of it was, I'm sorry I scared you all.
Sid recovers quickly, but the party is over.
The overdose made me very nervous, and it wasn't what we had planned. We did not want to have a heroin party. I talked to Howie and Jerry only, and we said, let's get out of here.
Sid has barely survived a heroin overdose, but already he's thinking about his next hit.
What do you need?
Can you get me another hit?
After the Pistols split, Sid and Nancy became inseparable. She declared herself his manager. They moved to New York and set up home at the Chelsea Hotel. They filled their days taking heroin and hanging around at Manhattan's punk clubs.
When I first met Sid with Nancy at Revenge, they seemed happy. And then over the course of the next 6 weeks or so, you could see that he was not doing well. I'd see him out at CBGB's and he'd just be sitting there with his head hanging, and Nancy would be handing him one drink after another.
Then, just 48 days after moving to New York, Sid's world fell apart.
Sid's like, out of it. And then the next thing he woke up. When Nancy's dead on the bed with the flick knife that Sid had bought that day, sticking out of her stomach. And he knew nothing about it.
Nancy was lying dead. The murder weapon, Sid's 5-inch flick knife. But Sid couldn't remember a thing. They'd been on a drug binge with random hangers-on, taking Tuinol, a barbiturate, methadone, Quaaludes, and heroin.
He may very well have been completely obliterated. He may even been unconscious at different points based on the amount of drugs he ingested. Not just heroin, there was Tuinol and other things that had been used and abused.
Sid claimed to have no idea whether he killed Nancy or not. From that moment, Sid spiraled into depression. Not knowing whether he murdered his girlfriend would haunt him for the rest of his short life. Sid Vicious has just 3 hours left to live. He's been charged with the murder of his girlfriend, Nancy Spungen, but claims he was so out of it, he doesn't know whether he killed her or not. It's the early hours of the morning in Michelle Robinson's apartment.
What do you need?
Sid has just survived an accidental heroin overdose, but now he wants to take more.
You get me another hit. No. You've had enough for now, buddy.
I told him that was it. There wasn't any more left, you know, because he kept, oh, where's the rest of it? Where's the rest of it? I want to do more. Sid, you've had too much, blah, blah, blah. You know, be careful. So he obviously knew I had some more, so I had to give him a little bit more. The second amount that I gave him wasn't that much.
Within 2 hours of his near-fatal overdose, Sid injects more heroin.
There was no frame. There were no goalposts. He never saw a red light. He only saw green. Danger wasn't something that he'd ever consider. And he never ever thought that his life was important.
This time, Sid takes a small amount. As the drug takes hold, he begins to talk. It's the last conversation Kodik will have with Sid.
You know, we spent like the last 2 hours, you know, talking about, you know, what he's going to do. You know, he was due to go up to record this album, which is going to finance all the lawyers' fees, etc. We talked a little bit about Nancy and stuff like that. Yeah, he was fine.
After checking on Sid, Kodik makes plans to leave the apartment.
What heroin there was left, I gave to his mother. And I said, look, as far as Sid knows, there's no heroin left, okay? It's all gone. Give him this in the morning. She's like, fine, fine, yeah. She said, you promised, Beverly, you promised you won't do this. Yes, yes, I promise.
Kodik gives the leftover heroin to Sid's mum and leaves.
All I know is when I left the house at about 2 o'clock, he was fine.
Kodik is one of the last people to see Sid alive. His heroin intake is now being rationed, and he's making plans for the future. There's nothing to suggest that in less than 2 hours, he'll be dead. 4 days after being arrested for Nancy's murder, Sid was released on bail for the first time. In the days after Nancy's death, Sid was racked with guilt over what he might have done and sliding into a deep depression. His mother, Anne, and the Sex Pistols manager, Malcolm McLaren, became so concerned they asked forensic psychiatrist Dr. Steve Teach to assess Sid's state of mind.
It seemed he had a much longer depression going on from his childhood about kind of being treated second class by a society. He seemed to have no sense of purpose. The Sex Pistols had broken up and Nancy's death was overwhelming him. I mean, his coping strategy had been heroin.
The Sid Vicious tough guy persona was being tested to the limit. Facing a murder charge, the facade was falling apart, and more than ever, it seemed that Sid was capable of anything. Psychiatrist Steve Teach suggested that McLaren or his mother keep Sid under constant surveillance.
I recommended that they watch him, that one of the two people with him watch him all the time.
But they didn't.
The mother had gone off and scored dope for Sid around Union Square that night, 14th Street. It was easy to score dope in those days around that vicinity. And Sid had taken a light bulb from the toilet and had gashed his hands, you know? And his hands were sort of reaching out like this as we came through the door, and they were dripping. Both hands were just dripping with blood.
I got another call that he had cut himself when I come back over to the hotel. So I went back over there, and indeed, he had slashed his arm lengthwise from his wrist all the way down to his elbow area. And they had it compressed so the bleeding was contained. That wasn't in danger, but it was quite clear that he was now at a different level.
It was clear that Sid was not stable. Also, his mother seemed to be having problems. She was bruised. They'd obviously been in a fight together. She just couldn't look after him, but maybe nobody could at that point. I'm not sure.
And so we talked and decided that had to put him in the hospital and called emergency medical services to come over.
In New York, if you call an ambulance immediately, along come the police. And in this instance, Sid being such a high-profile character, it was going to be a rough ride.
When he saw the police, he ran for the open window and grabbed him, just held him, and then the police came in. I think the cut wasn't a suicide attempt. I've seen people, particularly in prison when I was working there, that cut themselves, and the usual report is that they're in such pain they cut themselves essentially to let the pain out. And I think that was much more of what was going on there, but nonetheless, it was dangerous.
Sid was taken immediately to the Bellevue Psychiatric Hospital. Steve Teach was deeply concerned about Sid's state of mind and recommended he received long-term psychiatric care. But that didn't happen. Sid refused to stay and was released from Bellevue. In the weeks that followed, Sid repeatedly gave interviews to the press where he spoke of his desire to kill himself. In one interview, he claimed he wanted to be 6 feet underground and be at peace with Nancy. Unsurprisingly, this led the world to think that Sid ultimately took his own life. It now appears that this was not the case. Sid Vicious now has just minutes left to live. The party at Michelle Robinson's apartment is over. Sid is in bed with Michelle while his mother, Anne, sleeps in the next room. Sid has somehow managed to get his hands on the heroin. What happens next has been a closely guarded secret for 27 years. Some have speculated that Sid committed suicide, but for the first time, Sergeant Richard Houseman of the New York Police Department reveals what he was told when he investigated Sid's death.
Michelle said she was in bed with him. They were engaged in lovemaking, and that he decided to get high. She didn't want to let him get high. So in the meantime, he started to cook the drug up and wanted her to inject it into him. And she said no, she wouldn't do that.
Let's help me out a bit, will you? Come on.
I can't do it.
Why not? You can do it.
No, I won't.
It just takes a second.
I just won't do it. Okay, fine.
Yeah?
Yep.
Unable to cope with Sid's demands, Michelle leaves the room.
She came back out here into the front room, and then the mother, she told the mother what had happened, and the mother then said, well, I'll go in and see him. So the mother went in.
Sid's mother died of an overdose in 1996, but before she died, she made a remarkable confession to journalist Alan Parker. Faced with Sergeant Houseman's testimony, Parker has agreed to reveal her secret.
Anne told Michelle to wait in the living room while she went to speak to her son. Because he'd OD'd, he was in a very sweaty, shaky, horrible state, and he couldn't reapply the tourniquet, fill a syringe, or inject himself again. So she did. She reapplied the tourniquet, and she filled the syringe, and she re-injected him. And being a heroin addict herself, she knew exactly what to put inside that syringe that basically would have been enough drugs to kill 2 people, never mind 1.
With Sid's mother dead, we'll never know the precise motive for her actions on that day. But Parker believes she deliberately killed her own son as an act of mercy. In spite of the confidence of his lawyers, she knew Sid was terrified he might be sent back to Rikers, and so she took matters into her own hands.
And I only believe she did what she did because there was still that tingling thing at the back of her mind and at the back of his mind that he might not get off and he might end up being in prison for 20-odd years.
Michelle Robinson was outside the room, so there were no witnesses to Anne's actions, and the authorities were unable to prosecute. With Sid dead, the case of Nancy's murder was closed. For the New York police, Sid was the only suspect.
It's a difficult thing to have to come to terms with because, I was part and parcel of supplying him with something which probably was responsible for killing him off.
If I regret anything, I regret not having been there.
Sid was a child, he never grew up and never really had the chance to.